Hey friends, welcome to the Intentional Mind podcast. It's Ange here, your host, and today we are continuing on with our series around fixing the cracks in your foundation so that you can start to build more intentionally and actually grow versus building something and it comes crashing down later because your foundation was cracked. Now, I talked about how there's three key areas that I feel like people should really think about having solid foundation in, making sure there's no leaks in those areas or like major leaks. There might always be challenges because we're humans, but like huge gaps and leaks that are preventing us from actually moving forward and making progress. So those three key areas I want to dive into in this series are relationships and specifically the relationship that you have with your spouse if you are married. And the second area is health, your own health. And the third area is your environment, the space that you are in on any given day or like where you're at most of the time. If those foundational areas, again, have major cracks or major energy leaks, it's really going to prevent you from making the kind of progress that you want in your life. And many of us, we like to say that we're not making the progress that we want because we're not disciplined enough, or we don't have the motivation, or we don't have. And I want to dive deeper into maybe you're not making the progress that you want because you have major energy leaks that are affecting your energy and your focus and your ability to move forward. And usually it's in those three areas. So I want to today talk about the relationship foundation area. I said in the last episode that I was going to dive into health first, but I changed my mind. Permission to change your mind. And the reason I changed my mind was because it's so fresh in my mind about tools that you can use to improve your relationship with your significant other because I just got back from a marriage retreat this past weekend. So, what I wanted to do was share with you these tools and these things that I learned in hopes that this could help you in this foundational area of your personal relationship with your significant other. And why is this so important? Let's be real. Many of us weren't really shown how to have a very happy, healthy relationship and how to handle conflict in a very healthy way. Let's be real, because many of our parents didn't really have a very healthy relationships. You know, at least I know that's true for a lot of people I know. They would say like, yeah, my parents' relationship wasn't one that I want to have. They would say that. Or they would say that their parents didn't handle conflict in a very good way. Either they just avoided each other or swept things under the rug. That's how my family was. Or they blew up and screamed at each other and it was very like a toxic environment that they created. How do you, like, for example, me and Ian were parents. How do we model how to have a healthy relationship to our children if we were never taught how to, or if we've never been given the tools to? It'd be really difficult and how to do that. So I realized that I really wanted to learn, what do the happy, healthy relationships, people that have those happy and healthy relationships, what are they doing to manage conflict? How are they communicating with each other? How are they prioritizing their time with each other when life gets so busy with kids and all the things? So I had all these questions. So I'm a big believer of this. When you want to have a certain result in your life, you find the people who have those results and you model the habits and the behavior that they have. That is how you learn as humans. That's how we're wired. When I wanted to be a top podcaster, I studied top podcasters. I looked at what they did. When I wanted to be a professional speaker, same thing. I hired another professional speaker to teach me the ways and I followed their path. So I'm doing the same thing in this bucket of relationships for me because I realized there was a crack in my foundation. Why? Because I felt like, keeping it real, that I felt like my husband and I just weren't communicating very well. We were doing a lot of avoidance, ignoring each other, a little resentment on each end, building up stuff that happens in marriage, which is pretty common, especially when you have children, you have all these other demands and a busy work schedule and all the things, right? It's easy to let your marriage take the back seat. It's easy to start to feel like your roommates just checking boxes trying to get by. That's a common thing that people feel. And for me, I wanted to feel like we're a team, we're each other's biggest cheerleaders, and we are thriving together. And we have a vision that we're working on, and we feel excited about life. And we create this adventurous, fun life filled with freedom and joy. And we model what it looks like to have a happy, healthy relationship to our children. That's who I wanted to be. So, what I decided, since I felt that energy was lower in that area, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I have no shame around that because I feel like if you look at the data, 99% of marriages struggle. 99% at different points in their marriage will struggle because we're humans trying to, do life together, and it gets difficult and challenging. And again, most of us weren't taught the tools around how to manage conflict in a very healthy way or disagreements. All right. So what I did was I got intentional about this, and I was like, let's see, because Ian and I both love traveling and we love an adventure, all the things. So I was like, I wonder if there's like a retreat that I could go on. Like we could go and we could dive in and learn some tools and have this quality time for each other. And, I looked at the calendar, and we are both very busy. And we literally, like, we plan our calendar like a year in advance. We book everything out. And I found one weekend where we didn't have a plan before Ian was about to leave on another trip and stuff. And I was like, I wonder if I could find a retreat. And I like chat GPT'd all the things, looking at what I put in the qualifications I was looking for in a retreat, like the characteristics, I mean. And then I was like, this weekend, yada, yada. And I started putting things out there, and I found one that was happening. And I felt like, well, actually, I found multiple ones that were happening. But when I went to go look at flights, it just didn't line up. It wasn't working. And I actually felt really stressed out about it. I was like, oh, this is only like, I really feel like we need to work on this. Like, I want to do this. Is like the set time that we have, blah, blah. But then I had to shift. Like, so I want to be clear about this. My energy shifted low. And I was like, okay, Ange, what's another thought here that can serve you? And you know what served me was one of my favorite thoughts, and it's everything is happening for you. And I was like, it's supposed to be happening for me. These flights might not be lining up because it's for me. Maybe God has a better plan. And then like last minute, I ended up finding this event that was happening on the weekend, perfect timing because the other ones were all like having to cause us to take off work, and it was just really inconvenient. But this one was like the perfect chunk of time. It was in New Orleans, which Ian and I had actually never been to New Orleans. And I don't think we would naturally just book a trip to New Orleans because we're just different kinds of travelers. We usually don't go to like major cities. We're usually like more like off the beaten path type of travelers. But I was curious about New Orleans. So it was happening, and I was like, okay, let's look at flights. I figured it out. Long story short, everything lined up. Like the flights I got, like I could book it with my points. Like I could easily bring my au pair. It didn't cost a lot more. I found housing or like lodging that was perfect for what we need. Like all the things were lining up. And I was like, okay, this is it. So we ended up going, and it was so much freaking fun. And I really loved the energy that was there. People were so sweet. We ended up getting, long story short, the AC didn't work, which really sucked because it's so hot in the summer there. But anyways, the AC didn't work, and then they had to fix it and do all these things. Long story short, they moved us into like a signature room eventually. So it was happening for us. I had to tell myself that. And I liked the room more. And because of the difficulties, they ended up letting us extend and stay there without charging us until like 3 p.m., which basically you should have charged us to like another night. So that way my son had a place to go because the event was ending early. All these things were lining up. But this is the thing, y'all. So many times in our life, stuff happens and your energy shifts low. And I really try hard to tell myself, this is happening for you in some way. Like, I don't know how. Like, a lot of times I'm like, I don't know how, but it is. And then I see evidence of it. I just feel like it's fun to do that because then you start to see evidence. So, anyways, that happened to me this weekend. So we went to the event, and I know I'm giving all these details. You don't need to know all the details, but I got to put this in your mind. It's just how I tell stories. But it was so fun, and just the energy of the town. And I ate a lot of beignets, the little donuts with the powdered sugar, and I had like the chicory root coffee. And I remembered why I loved that coffee because back in the day, Ian was like, Ange, I remember when I first met you, you used to drink this coffee and you'd order it in the can and everything. And I'm like, yeah. And it was because long story short, I worked at a restaurant that was like a New Orleans themed restaurant when I was like in my teens. And I was introduced to the chicory root coffee from New Orleans. And I loved it. And I used to buy it in the can and all the things. And it was just like a fun thing because he was like, remember that when I first met you? And I'm like, oh, so we're like bringing ourselves back to like when he first met me. And it was just fun. I felt like that was a little God wink. Okay. So continuing on, what did I learn? I got notes here and how I've been taking notes, which I recommend you do. If you attend an event or something like that, do this. Create a page that has like a table, and on the left side put learn, on the right side put do. So you have two columns in this table. And then you'll have rows based on main points that you have. So then whatever you learned, you'll write that down on the left side, and on the right side you'll write out what you're going to do with that information. I love taking notes this way. So I got all my notes set up. And I'm going to dive into everything. And I really feel I want you to be open to hearing this because I really think that all of these thoughts and these beliefs are really going to help you in your marriage just to improve it. Even if you already have a stellar relationship or marriage, like this is still going to take you to the next level. And this is also going to give you tools if you're a parent that you could potentially share with your kids. All right, let's go. One of the things they talked about was being the person who chooses to believe the best in someone and seeing the good. So, for an example, one thing would be like the other day, I was annoyed because I told my husband to take something out into the garage and he still didn't take it out of the garage. And I remember coming down for the night and I was like, oh, are you kidding me? You know, like I'm grabbing all the things and bringing it to the garage. And I was like huffing and puffing and just annoyed with him. And then I was like, oh, thanks for doing this, you know, like all sarcastic and stuff. And I remember thinking I was annoyed because I felt like, okay, you don't even consider this. Like, I'm sure I thought he was being selfish, whatever in my mind. Instead of choosing to believe the best, that when he actually told me, he's like, oh, sorry, Ange, I didn't do that because I was busy packing for this thing and I forgot about it. Like, believing the best in someone. Like, they didn't do that because of the best thing versus you choosing to believe the worst about them. And I thought about like, how often do I do that? That I criticize him for something where I'm not choosing to believe the best in him. And I just want to be that person that chooses to believe the best, even in my children, or like, let's say an interaction with an employee or, you know, work stuff. Like, instead of jumping to the conclusion that this person is being insert negative thing, what if I chose to believe the best about them, even if it wasn't true? Because it just helped my own energy and helped me be a better person. I felt like I just needed that reminder. And then the other thing they talked about, which I got to find my notes on this one because I feel like this is so relevant. Hold up a second. Anger. So when it comes to anger, all anger is a result of unmet expectations. Really let that sink in. All anger is a result of unmet expectations, meaning when you get mad, it's because you had an expectation for how someone else should show up. And because they didn't show up that way, now you're upset. Why is this important? Because when you have a gap between what you expect and what you experience, there's the gap that causes the anger because you had this expectation, but you didn't experience it. Now you have a choice. You have a choice in what you believe about the situation. I always talk about I have this mantra that everything is happening for me. And I like to default to, I don't always default there. I try to get myself to, but sometimes I'll notice the anger and then I'll be like, okay, what if this was happening for you? And I'm like, let me choose to believe that. But another thought that you can have is simply, again, choosing to believe the best or the worst. The thing that you expected to happen, it didn't happen. Someone behaved in another way. Now you have a choice to believe the best about that person. One of the core beliefs that we learned when I was in my coaching training was that everybody does the best that they can, given their situation, given their experiences, given what they believe at the time, given the tools that they have. They're just doing the best that they can. And I feel like that really has served me to believe that about people. It's like, given what they know at this time, given what their experience has been, has what's been taught to them, the tools they have, the awareness that they have, they're doing the best that they can. So I just really think about, again, if you like, for example, when I was kind of pissed that when we were in New Orleans and we get there at like 2 in the morning. Okay. Our room is hot as F, like it's hot. And they can't fix it. They didn't have the crib in there like they told us. The blankets weren't there that we needed, and we're tired and we're hot and you know all the things. You're hungry. It's like you're all the things. So I felt like in that moment, my expectation was you told me on the phone that you'd have the crib set up. I assumed there'd be air conditioning. I assumed, right, my expectation. But what was actually the experience was not that. And again, I had a choice. Do I choose to believe in the best in people? Like, oh, this stuff happens, like tech issues, AC issues, things happen. Do I choose to go to a negative place and resent and be hateful and mean and crappy to the people that show up and are trying to fix things and blaming them? Like, what does that do? But I've been that person. I've been that person. But this is the thing is like, again, it's always a choice when we have unmet expectations. I think of the root of a lot of our suffering is the fact that we expect people to be a certain way. We expect things to be a certain way. And when it doesn't work out the way that we expect and we want, then we can create a lot of stress for ourselves and suffering because we're still holding on to that and wanting it to be the other way versus being unattached and being open to maybe it could even be better than you thought could be. Just maybe. Would you be open to that possibility? Or are you going to hold and clench and then cause more generation of catabolic energy in that space? Again, just thinking this is a choice. It's a choice. It's a choice to love in this situation. It's a choice to believe the best. I felt like that mindset shift, man, it just really served me in so many ways. Okay. Another note I have here is when anger shows up, notice anger isn't bad. It can be an opportunity to bring God in. Anger is being alive. All emotion has value because sometimes we feel like being mad is a bad thing. And I actually had this show up in my profile where I actually have like more my default under stress is avoidance. So instead of like, it's not my default to be mad and angry and hateful. Like I usually default to like, let me avoid and just like crawl in a hole, like that's how it is with conflict too. I've learned that. So what was taught to me is that instead of seeing it as a bad thing, see it as an opportunity for me to get closer to God when I am angry. See it as an opportunity for me to be the kind of person that I want to be and notice what I want to do with the anger. What is the anger teaching me? Is it teaching me that like, oh, I'm pissed and I'm actually not living the life I want? Or I'm just, and it actually will cause you to take action. It can actually be a powerful, helpful emotion if you use it in that way. And I've seen this with my clients too. When they actually finally get upset about how things have been, it's like they're ready to do something. Whereas before, they may have been living in the state of like, just like can't really do anything anyways, like this hopeless, like at the effect of life, versus being like, I'm pissed and we're done with this. No longer is it going to be this way. And then you're actually going to do something. So it can be, again, a helpful emotion, just seeing it like that. Here's some questions that they said to ask yourself when you experience anger. What did I expect? Ask yourself that. Just acknowledge, notice there's an expectation unmet here. What was it that you expected? And then try to get God's perspective on that. Like it could be like, let me pray about this. Like, how do you want me to show up in this situation? What would Jesus do? WWJD, you need to wear that bracelet. I don't know. Or what would whatever do, whoever you admire. And then choose how to respond and be like, I'm going to be intentional with the energy I bring here. I'm going to bring joy into this situation because of who I am. Not because of who they are, not because of what happened, but because of my heart and my spirit. I just love thinking like that. What else do we got here? The gift of anger, it reveals what matters to you and what you value. Like I said, I've seen this a lot with my clients. So it's a sign. If something really pisses you off, it's usually because a value of yours is challenged. How do we honor that value more in your life? That's what I'm often talking to my clients about. There's three dimensions of needs that we have. And this is important to think about when it comes to relationship with your significant other. There's a physical need that we have. This is stuff like food, air, the basic needs that you need water to live, shelter. Emotional needs. This is where you get acceptance, comfort, respect from someone else. And spiritual needs. This is where your purpose and significance comes from. And this is God. And only God really can meet that need. The need that is mostly met by your significant other is the emotional need. And of course, if you have someone that's helping provide food and all those things, yeah, that's a different need. But generally speaking, that they said was the purpose of why God made a helper for, Adam. I mean, Eve is like, there's an emotional need because he actually talks about how he felt alone. Like, and God's like, oh, you felt alone. Like you felt lonely. So let me give you someone that's going to help you emotionally. Let me give you a partner in life that'll help you with your emotions. And you know what's sad is I've seen so many relationships where instead of that significant other being the person who provides comfort and peace, they're actually the person that provides stress and just, yeah, chaos, versus and discouragement versus uplifting. It's like, oh, wait, we got this wrong. Like you're supposed to be this kind of person to someone and they're encourager, the helper, the support. And it makes me think about like how I want to be that. So, anyways, the emotional need, that's what you're meeting. So, what we ended up doing is, as couples, we ended up doing this work where we got to learn more about what each other's emotional needs are and what does it mean to meet that need? What does it look like to the other person to meet that need? So, I'm going to share with you what those needs are because I think it'll be really fun to dive into this. And let me see if I actually, okay, here it is. Wrote it down. So, the three needs that I wrote down for myself was appreciation, freedom, and support. So there was a whole list of words that we could pick from. I also think about it as things that you really value. And for me, appreciation looks like you tell me, like you say like, oh, I really appreciate that you did this, or you notice it. You acknowledge the effort. Like I know that was hard to arrange that, but you figured it out. Like I love when my husband says that to me. It makes me feel so appreciated. What I don't love is when he doesn't acknowledge the work that I put in. So it's like he now that he knows that's important to me, he can do more of that. Freedom, like the freedom for me to get to choose what I do with my time is very important to me. So when I start to feel like I'm having to constantly do everything for everybody else or plan for them, I get really stressed out about that and I'm like I just feel like I can't do my workout. I can't like, breathe. I can't journal. Like I feel like the freedom that's important for me. So if my husband knows that it's an emotional need, the freedom to choose, he can help set up things to help me have that freedom more. And then support, like support meaning to me, what that looks like is like if you see that I'm stressed out about doing a bunch of things, then you say, what can I do to help? And you're taking away some of those burdens from me. I like that emotional support there. All right. So then he had, long story short, his were, I always say that, and it's never a short story. There's like a meme about that. When you say long story short and you're like, no, okay, here we go. It's not going to be short. All right. With him, he had encouragement, like he described what that meant to him. Security, like respecting him, knowing, showing that I have his back. Because sometimes there's been times where I've said things where it feels like he said, it doesn't feel like I have his back, like I would abandon him. Because I've like, I can be a little cold. Let me be real. I grew up in an environment where it was normal to leave if there was issues. So you're like, peace, done. And it can be very cold. And I can go to that default. That was what was modeled to me. And he can feel then very abandoned by me. But security is a big emotional need for him. And then encouragement, we talked about that, like saying you can do this or when there's challenges and stuff. And then sexual fulfillment, like I feel like that's a common guy thing. But so then you're thinking about that need too. And then you might be thinking like, okay, how do I help meet that need when maybe that's not a big priority for you? Like a lot of women can relate to that because you're like, I'm busy, I'm tired, I have all these things going on. Anyways, so those were some of the needs that we had talked about. And there's a whole list of them. But I think that was really important because we actually wrote down what it looks like to meet that need. And then it got you thinking, like, how can I be that person? How can I help fulfill that need? So that's something to think about with your significant other. What are their emotional needs? And usually things where if there is a space where emotional needs aren't being met, what happens is there's catabolic energy generating. There's this resentment. If there's a need that's very important to you and it's not being met, that's going to cause some tension in your relationship. So you do need to know that about each other. It's like knowing each other's biggest values. And it's crazy to me that so many couples don't know what each other's biggest values are and they aren't intentionally designing their lives based on their biggest values. That's what Ian and I really work hard to do. I feel like this is kind of a slight tweak on values, but I think it's just so helpful. And it makes me think about wanting to live in alignment with that more, those values, and honor them and these emotional needs that we have. Um, they said, do not be misled by bad company. Bad company corrupts good character. And this is a Bible verse too, 1 Corinthians 15:33. And that's so important to think about. It's like surrounding yourself with people that you want to be like. You often hear that, but do you often also surround yourself with people that have healthy and intentional marriages? Like, think about that. Like, do you need more people like that in your life or that have fun marriages that treat each other with respect? Like, how do you bring those right people into your life? Do you have people in your life that make the kind of finances that you want to make? Do you have people who are doing the kind of work that you'd like to do too? Like that are like it, because I can tell you, my conversations with people that are pretty high achievers, and I would say like at high levels of wherever they work or just in their career, very different than those that are in survival mode or like there's a different energy that's there. We're talking about different uplifting things. Like I want to be around people that I want to be more like. I want to be around people where it's normal. It's normal to go on trips all the time. It's normal to have an abundance of finances. It's normal to prioritize your health. Like, you know what I mean? Like, think about that. Like, you got to have those people around you. He also said every relationship is like a garden where you need to regularly weed it. It doesn't just like if you look at my one garden right now, oh my gosh, it's horrid. It's just weeds, just literally weeds. I tried to grow strawberries, it didn't work out, but I don't weed it. I don't tend to it. And that's how a marriage can be after a while. If you don't attend to the weeds, it gets bad, it gets rough. So what are the weeds? And they also talked about not going to sleep angry. And this is biblical too, but I often think about how when you go to bed, I know if you can sleep on it, you can feel better. But for me, if there's like an underlying issue, I think a lot about it when I'm in bed. I'm like stewing over it. And then when I wake up in the morning, it's often like the first thing I think about. So it's like I start my day off again on a lower energy place. I like to just like shift the energy, then go to bed and I can start on a new day with a good high energy. So I've been thinking about how what that looks like with my husband. And it might even just be something like we don't have to fix it all now, but it could be like, I just want to let you know before you go to bed, I love you so much. And I'm committed to like figuring this out with you, you know, and like that could just feel good for me to start my next day. Just again, not going to bed angry. All right, death and life are in the power of the tongue. What they have found, there was a research study that they were talking about, is that for every six criticisms in like couples gave, there was only one encouragement. So we're more likely to criticize than we are to encourage. And I want to switch that. I want to be the kind of person that's more likely to encourage than I am to criticize. And criticizing what you do, you tear people down. Encouragement is when you build people up. And you think about that in your marriage, like you want to be the person that builds your significant other up. So what are you saying to them to build them up? And they should be doing the same thing to you. And that's a commitment that you guys have with each other. And that should be something you should be thinking about regularly. And then one criticism, really think about this. One criticism can completely ruin your day, where one encouragement can completely make your day. I think about that with the people I love, like my son and my husband or my sisters or friends. Like I could build their day up. I can make their day by the goodness that I share with them versus, you know, criticism. I could do that with a stranger. I could tell a stranger something and completely shift their energy and that ripples on beyond them. I just love that power that we have. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that I shared in my TEDx talk, which is in a world filled with red ink pens, be the highlighter. And that's so true because so many people are out there wanting to criticize versus showing up and highlighting the goodness in other. I have an entire children's book about it. It's almost done. My children's book's almost done. I'll tell you more about it when it's officially done. It just got sent. I believe it's the final, fingers crossed. I hope it's the final revision because we've had a lot of revisions. But I hope we're almost there and I'll share it with you. I'm so excited because it's about highlighting the goodness in others, teaching your kids how to be highlighters, how to be energy shifters, bringing in the higher energy. And your belief in someone else shapes them. What you believe about someone else can shape them. Really think about this. People in my life who have believed in me that weren't even part of my family, they shaped my entire future. They told me I could do something and that changed the actions that I took. Same thing with like in my own relationship with my husband, I can shape the action that he takes by sharing what he can do, and he can do the same thing and build it in me and say, "I believe in you. I know you can do this." They shared this story about Miss America in 1980 and how when she was a little girl, there was a milkman that would come to her house, and every day he would say to her, or when he came there, "How's my little Miss America doing today?" And it really like programmed like an identity in her. And it was because he shared these kind words to her. And she ended up becoming Miss America one day, right? So my point is that think about like what the impact of what you are telling yourself and what other people are telling you and what's getting programmed in there and how you show up. We need to be more intentional with what we say to our kids and spouses. There's always a kid in them. Like I think everybody wants to be acknowledged, to be validated, to be encouraged. And we forget that. Like everybody does. And when we did some case studies and we looked at like what do people need based on how they were showing up and like these different couples stuff that we were doing in the retreat, it all came down to like everyone wanted to be seen, recognized for what they were doing, what they were contributing. They wanted to be validated. They want to be encouraged. Like, how often, though, are you actually making sure you're doing that? Like, really think about it. All right. Tips to be a better encourager. They said get intentional about being encouraging, make it part of your identity. I actually write notes to my husband in his lunch and he will keep them. He saves them, but it'll say like just something encouraging, something I admire about him, and he likes that. Remember to acknowledge and affirm good effort. Specifically say like thank, and I really try to do that. I will say like thank you so much for mowing the lawn. Thank you for doing this. Thanks for like, fill in the blank and really pointing out the specific things. Thanks for planning that trip. I know it took a lot of effort, that kind of stuff. Like noticing the work that goes into it. Developing a habit around it, expressing your gratitude. Like I love starting my day with gratitude. I open my eyes, and you know what I've noticed? I noticed this. A lot of times I open my eyes and my first thought goes into, oh my gosh, I need to get this done today. I have all these things I need to do. And I really got to work to shift that because it's a catabolic, like, oh my gosh, I'm behind. Like it's the default that happens. So for me, what I've been doing is shifting it and saying, let's stop here. And what am I grateful for this morning? And God, I want to have you like come into my life and help me show up as the best person I can today and help the people that I'm going to interact with today. Like use me. Like I really have to be intentional about my thoughts because I default to fear or I default to like scarcity mindset or I didn't get this done. Like it's not a higher energy that I default to. Like I've been noticing it daily. I don't default there. I have to intentionally shift it to the gratitude state. I want to get in the habit of doing it before I go to bed and in the morning too, expressing my gratitude, listing things, even telling my husband. Okay, this is really good. This is a tool that you can take with you that we learned. When you get angry, how do you communicate that? So what they recommended that you say is when this happened, you describe it. When you ignored me when I asked you to do XYZ thing or you didn't talk back to me, I felt, and you put in the feeling, I felt discouraged. I felt unvalued. I felt unloved. And that's how you express how you felt. And hopefully, the other person can show up in a better way as a response to that. I'm not saying everybody is, but we've noticed when we were doing this work with each other, we were much more likely to listen to the other person. And this is the other piece of the work, like as couples, where we communicate this way and then we listen to what they are saying. And then we share our perspective behind it. And you might be like, oh, I never intended for you to feel unloved. I just ignored you because I was busy and I was stressed out and I was trying to work. And then we actually did that around, we had to list like a bunch of ways that we've been hurt in a relationship, each of us. And we needed to do this work with each other. Like we did this for a date night where we said, when this happened, we described it and said, I felt, and we went through that. And then the other person had to listen and then share and acknowledge. And it was so helpful because sometimes, like some of the situations, my husband's like, oh my gosh, that wasn't my intention at all. Like I did that because I actually was worried about how you felt. And I just felt that. And when he explained stuff and I did the same thing to him, it was so much better. Like I feel like it was so healing. So we went on a whole list. So I think that tool going forward is I'm committed to saying when this happened, explain the thing, I felt blank. And then he's also committed to listening and the same thing vice versa. So I think that's a really great tool. And I want to teach my son how to handle conflict in that way and express how you feel and allow the space for someone else to share. And it's really empathy. We talked about empathy was the key. You're empathizing with someone else around like why they feel that way and why it would might make sense that they would feel that way given their experiences. And yeah, that's the key there. And the other thing they said is you cannot criticize your way to a better work environment, marriage, or anything. That's so true. It's like energy. You put in catabolic energy into something, you think you're going to get something good out of it, and that's not how it works. You criticize someone, you think they're going to show up better. And if they do, there's a resentment there. What actually really helps is when you show up with anabolic energy and you notice the good, you point out the good, you share the good. And that can be really helpful. It's kind of like when you're training a dog too. You reinforce the good behavior that you want them to do. So you thinking about that, like, are you doing enough of the reinforcing of the good behavior? Or are you only criticizing? What does that look like? Okay, another thing is the written down is your worries reveal your priorities. So true. If you're worrying about something, that reveals your priorities. And sometimes the things that we worry about shouldn't even be a priority. Like I'm worrying about what someone said about me. It's like, should that really be a priority in my life? All right, another thing I wrote down is unproductive responses. The first response is a fact or a logic. Like when someone says to you something that hurt them or bothered them, and you respond like, well, this is the fact. You were late. You were late. Well, you did do whatever. And it's a fact. It's actually not that helpful. What's more helpful is acknowledging how that person felt. Like, oh, that would make sense that you would feel sad. Or not, even if you don't agree with it, you're acknowledging the feeling. Another unproductive response is criticizing back. That's a thing that I've noticed. We all have our certain defaults of unproductive responses. Like, for example, my husband goes to the like, well, you do this when I tell him something. He's like, well, you do this too, and you do that too. And I'm like, that's not helpful. Like, you criticizing back isn't helpful. It's not a productive response. So we shined a light on what those were. Another one is a complaint, like where they tell you when you did this it really bothered me, and you're like, well, it's similar to criticism but it's not attacking them specifically. It's more about like making excuses. Well, I wouldn't act that way if this thing was done, or if this was, this situation was this way, or if this, it's like, or you're just complaining. Like, it's a little slightly different than a specific criticism and an attack on someone. The other unproductive response is a complete withdrawal. My husband does this too. He'll just completely ignore you, like just check out, and that makes me livid. And I'm not saying I'm no angel, because there's unproductive responses that I do. I definitely do withdrawal too. I do. I like to use the facts and logic a lot, like bringing up, well, this, like, and I just list it, but it's not from like a good, helpful place. Okay, so thinking about what those are and what's an actually productive response is acknowledging the feeling and say like, oh, okay, like let me understand this feeling more, and let me tell you my intentions behind it and how whatever. Because usually you find that people, their tensions weren't awful as we thought. Like, there's other factors that played a role. And when you understand that, it just, you show up better and you receive it better. And the last thing I have here is couples who pray together stay together. And I think that's so true. Like, prayer is so powerful. And I don't think enough of us really consider about praying over our life, praying over our marriage, praying over what you want for other people, like talking to God and having that relationship. I don't think that's a priority for many of us. And we don't realize that energetic power that we have. Like, our thoughts have power. Us devoting energy towards something, like our thoughts towards it, give it power. Some of us are devoting energy towards things that we don't want to happen. That's the worries. You're giving more energy to that versus what you do want to happen. That's why visualization is so important, and you envisioning the kind of life that you want, and you getting into the right headspace every day versus path of negativity. And they're thinking about all the things that their spouse does wrong, all the things that sucked that day. And that doesn't serve you. You give more energy there, and your energy is powerful. So giving it into what you desire, give it into prayer, give it into like, I just saw this thing about like asking for blessings in your life, asking for favor, asking for protection, asking to be used. I think the prayer is just something that aren't like many of us aren't doing intentionally. So what I've been doing is I've been hugging my husband, and like in the morning I'll pray for him for work. I'll pray for him around his mindset. I'll pray for him to be used. And like, I just think I notice different things too. Like, I told him the days I pray for him, I've noticed like when he comes home, he'll be like, "Oh, this amazing thing happened," and I'm like, "Oh, I prayed for you today." And like sometimes he comes home and it's like something was crappy, and I'm not saying that's like directly related, but I feel like, oh yeah, I definitely didn't think about you today. I pray for you at all. Like, maybe that played a role. I don't know, because we're powerful beings. But anyways, just being intentional about where you direct your energy and the goodness you want to send to people. You want a we win energy. You want a supportive energy, not an energy of like, I just give everything to you and I get nothing back in return, because then you burn out and you get resentful. And a lot of women show up that way. Instead, it's like, hey, let's figure out this mutually beneficial thing. And let me advocate also for what works best for me too in my life. And you both should have that we win perspective. That's a team. That's an awesome power couple right there when you approach life from that place. All right, y'all. I hope you got a lot from this as far as just thinking through how you want to show up in your one of your most important relationships. This matters so much because I think about your household, your relationship with your significant other. It leads the household. And that energy ripples down and affects your environment. It affects the way you may show up for your health. And it also affects, if you have children, how your children feel. I mean, I can think back to like times I felt awful when I saw my parents like fighting, when there was like clear disconnect, where they avoided each other, when there was sadness. I have so many memories of that. I don't want my son to have that in my life. So I want to be intentional about how I show up, how I handle disagreements in a healthy way, how I choose to show up in love, how I model the way I want him to be to his significant other. All right, I hope this was helpful, and stay tuned for the next part of the series, which we're going to dive into health. All right, I'll talk to you soon, and let me know if you're enjoying this. I would love to hear. Also, if you want to leave an awesome podcast review, please do so. You can scroll down, you like hit the stars, and you actually have to hit write a review and write one. That'd be super helpful because it's been a while since we've had any updates to that. All right. Have a blessed day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.